guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome back to the channel, Simply Latrice, where I talk about simply being me. Today's topic is going to be Generation X, specifically around financial literacy and retirement. So for those of you who don't know, Generation X is the generation that was born between 1965 and 1980. And so I wanted to kind of touch on this. I briefly talk about it in some of my videos, my experience as a Gen Xer, and what it means to me in regards to how I look at retirement. I've always stated that retirement, I understand for me, is probably going to be different from, the next person, and it is for all of us, but more specifically for me as a Gen Xer, in my experience, is that retirement is not the, golden parachute, $1 million in your 401k, sipping mojitos, traveling across the world. That is not necessarily my interpretation of retirement in regards for myself. Okay. So growing up as a Generation Xer, for me, some of the major events that shaped my life, being born to a baby boomer, they were the last to have pensions. As I grew up, my mom was basically the not sole provider, but the majority of the income that our household saw came from my mom. And she was able to work, like one of these Xers type jobs where you made enough money to pay a mortgage, put food on the table, pay bills, but by no means did she do it in a manner that we lived in luxury. We struggled. I consider myself to have grown up in poverty. And most clearly, I think that had the biggest effect on me was my adolescence years, growing up during the war on drugs. Now, as I stated, my mom worked all the time, and so I was the person that kind of looked after my younger siblings. We did have an aunt that was elderly, an older aunt that lived down the street, and we would normally be between our house and her house, and then when we saw my mom's car in the driveway, we knew it was time that we could go home. But we pretty much watched each other. Like, we were out playing. We knew to get home when we saw the car in the yard or before the street light came on. So we pretty much took care of ourselves. And being that I was the oldest, I most definitely, helped with the upbringing of my two younger siblings. And so I understood responsibility and work at a young age. Now, as I said, we didn't have a lot. We had what we needed, not always what we wanted. And so I understood that the only way I was going to have things that I wanted, I would have to work. And so as I, once again, became an adolescent, when I got into my high school years, actually my first year in high school, I did the vocational classes where I was able to work. So I've worked since the age of 16, understanding that if I wanted anything, I was most definitely going to have to work for it. And so even though as a Gen Xer, I also had the opportunity to grow up when a lot of technology was starting to take off. But once again, coming from poverty, really just focused on surviving and helping take care of siblings, like there was no talk of financial literacy and what it meant to invest and buy stocks. And so missed out on the opportunity of owning stock in Walmart in the early years, or Apple, or Facebook, or Starbucks, or any of these things. So that was to no advantage for me. Looking back now, I was like, if I would have just known a little bit of something, I would be well over a millionaire by now. If I had invested in any one or even a couple of those companies, then I would have benefited from that now. But there was no talk of that. Baby boomers, in my experience, were very guarded with their financial, where they were financially. You didn't know what they had. You just, even to this day, my mom doesn't have any discussions of, what we need to do or what's here and what's there, as she's now 77 years old. And so those were things we just kind of learned, as we went along through life. I understood from a young age that work was going to be, part of who I was. I was always going to have to work. That was always my understanding. I just grew up to understand that you got a good job, you worked it, you saved, and you retired with the company. And so as I progressed, I knew that was not necessarily the way I wanted to go. I didn't want to always just work a job, work it hard, and hope that I would have enough to retire on. And so as I'm older, I understood that I did not want to continue on down that rabbit hole of just continuously working myself to death. There was gonna have to be a stopping point for me, and I tried to save and take advantage of 401ks and just read books and try to open up my mindset to how I was going to break away from that cycle. My career, realization about retirement. And so when I did start my career, I always knew about 401ks, and I knew that regardless of whether it was 1% or 2% or whatever, that I was always going to contribute to that in order to give myself a chance to have something that I could look forward to in my retirement years. And so being that, you kind of always, as a Gen Xer, starting from, I guess behind the 8-ball, I always was playing catch up. I never, once again, made a whole lot of money in the earlier years in my career. And so once again, it was just that mentality of being focused on getting by. But financial literacy was still not something I was very savvy about. And so that's when I began reading books, Susie Orman, David Bach, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, just a lot of, things about, or books about what you needed to do in order to have, or try to have a leg up when it came time to retire. And so I think just for me, I understand how you can spend a large part of your life working to just get by. There is not, you don't have a real forward-looking process when you're just concentrating on taking care of your children, keeping the lights on, keeping food on the table. And so as I think about how I was able to carve out a little bit of a way for me to step away from my traditional 9 to 5 and, work on growing, a few side hustles and venture off into other interests and try to make a living from those. I know that that's not something that a lot of people that came from my background, have. And I said in my last video, that's why that's something that I'm very passionate about. I'm once again not a financial advisor or financial planner. I am just a person that has worked since the age of 16 and understood that if I did not try to have a forward thinking or a forward looking vision of what my life would be as I got 55 or older, I would basically work until, the day I died. And to be honest, as I said, retirement is going to look different for me, because even though I will not return as a salary manager or, things to that nature, I do still see myself working a part-time job if I have to, or, I just heard the Insta work type things. So I think I'm just lessons learned, and any advice that I could give is just financial literacy is very important. I feel that once again, we may not, or I'm not in, I feel like the income brackets where I need to have a financial advisor. I seek advice, financial planners, things that were provided through jobs. But I feel that it's very important that we do educate ourselves to the best of our ability. I feel that we should have conversations with our kids about things that we've learned, about our own situations as we're getting older, give them information that they need. I just think that no matter what your background is or how much money you've made, you need to be in a position where you take care of it so that it could take care of you. Growing up as a Gen Xer, financial literacy was just not part of the equation. We were just focused on getting by, surviving. And when you put in the mix of the war on drugs and the devastation it had within my community, on my family and friends, it became clear to me that I was going to have to figure out a path that would ensure that I was able to live a different type of life. So this is the end of the video, and as always, I thank you for watching my videos. Please leave a comment if you're a Gen Xer. I'd like to hear some of the things that you've had to overcome and how you feel about your path to retirement. So please like and share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.